Hey guys, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to Sidebar Forever. If you like the show, please subscribe to us at sidebarforever.com, as well as share episodes of the podcast on your social media. That way, new listeners can find us as well. After we recorded our recap of Marvel's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we remembered we hadn't discussed recent comments made by writer and Winter Soldier creator Ed Brubaker. On episode 326 of the Fatman Beyond podcast with Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin, Brubaker reveals in candid detail his unease at seeing the success of the soldier on the big and small screens. Brubaker and his artist/co-creator Steve Epting made those comics under work for hire, sure, but Ed also makes it clear that at the time, Marvel did not have its own movie studio, nor was it owned by Disney. And as to him and Steve being offered any kind of commensurate thank you money after the fact, Ed politely describes it as quote-unquote ungenerous. On today's episode of Sidebar Forever, we unpack Brubaker's points and try to put them in historical context with other comic book creators who have been paid short shrift. Comics history is literally and unfortunately strewn with the corpses of writers and artists who have had characters that they created be repurposed by Marvel and DC for animation, live-action TV, and feature films. And while the big two have been known to offer creator participation to some, that certainly has not been the case for all. I'm Adrian Johnson. Today, it's Dwight, Swain, and myself righting comic book wrongs like Neil Adams in the 1970s as we chop up the hashtag Pay Brubaker and Epting.
And, man, some of that is like it's work for hire, but at the same time, it's like it shows a basic lack of understanding and giving a shit about creators, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we know you work for hire and whatnot, but the reality situation is, it's like they don't give a damn, man. It's like this is a product. You made the product. It's like this. You work back on the burger board. You put the hamburger together, a cheeseburger. You know what I'm saying? Maybe in pretty, like the advertised piece and whatnot that we show in the commercials, right? Mm-hmm. But you know what? You made that burger. You're paid to make that burger. You get no kudos for it, but a pat on the back and shut the hell up and keep going.
But see, that's part of the thing, though, and we'll get into it once we get into the actual conversation. But you think about like for McDonald's, for example, the franchisee way back in the early '70s who developed the Big Mac,
right?
Not Kroc, but one of the franchise owners in Pittsburgh or something,
right?
Yeah, he started making his own version and called it the Big Mac, the format that it is now. And then the higher ups, corporate, said, that's a good idea. We need to just make that sandwich available company-wide.
Right.
You think he gets a royalty? Does his family get a royalty? No.
Negative.
No. They're like, that's a good idea. Thanks. Next. Or on the wire Swizz, that in the pit when they were having a conversation about them chicken nuggets.
Right.
You think the man who invented chicken nuggets you think he getting broke off a check? No.
Right.
That's a good idea. Thank you. We'll keep it moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look, Wallace was like, the motherfucker that made the chicken nuggets, that motherfucker was a genius. He probably the richest person on the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Taking all the bone out of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Oh, man.
I mean, in the immortal words of Jack Kirby, man, comics will break your heart, yo. That's just the reality,
Yeah. What's what you said a long time ago, man? Anything to make you laugh, make you cry.
Yeah.
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 That's right.
Yeah,
That's
man.
right. Comic book writer Ed Brubaker appeared on the Fatman Beyond podcast, episode number 326, with Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin. And they were talking to him about, the television show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And, and Mark and Kevin are, super excited about the show because they both love it. And Ed talked about how he created the character of the Winter Soldier. But Ed also went into great detail, kind of lamenting, in a professional and polite way, I would say, his kind of misgivings and his unease about seeing the immense success of, James Buchanan Barnes, aka now the Winter Soldier, seeing that character go to the big and small screens, and how little thanks in the form of financial restitution or some kind of, compensation, that he and his co-creator Steve Epting have seen as a result. And I think, Ed, I think he handled it in a way where he owned up to the fact that, he and Epting were working under a work for hire agreement, which basically, one, they didn't create Bucky Barnes as the character.
Right.
And two, working under work for hire, basically anything that you create, becomes the ownership of, of the person that that you're working for. But he did use the word, he said that that Marvel Studios and or Disney, they have offered him a, like a thank you money. And he said, he's described it as very ungenerous, like a pittance. He said, it's what a TV writer would make in about 2 or 3 weeks of working on a let's say a network television show. And I know for a fact that a baby TV writer working on a network television show makes between probably $2,000 and $4,000 a week. So you're probably talking maybe $10,000 or $12,000, $15,000. And so anyway, Brubaker, like I said, I think he pretty fairly owned up to the fact that he knew what he was walking into when he got there. But if you're going to say thank you for helping create a character that's appeared in 4 feature films, they have merch, there's a TV show, it's a hit TV show. Brubaker talked about, kids come to his house on Halloween and trick-or-treating as the Winter Soldier. If you're going to say thank you, say legitimately say thank you. Otherwise, it ends up being, it's a pittance. It's almost an insult. But
right.
Both you guys listened to the podcast interview with Mark and Kevin. What were your initial thoughts after finishing it? I think, Adrian, you probably heard it the freshest of us all. I think Dee and I had heard it a week or two ago. But what did you think, man?
Yeah, I listened to it yesterday, and it's one of those things where I think some type of compensation is due. Just in regards to how within the last 4 or 5 decades that's changed. Since the 70s. So to speak. Once you had this new crop of creators coming in, and they were just a bit, not really savvy about the business side, but they were asking, well, hey, what about royalties? Hey, what about this? You know what I'm saying? As they were getting installed at Marvel in the early 80s by Shooter, But as far as compensation for use of past characters, I feel like that is something, because again, it is work for hire. So underneath that, you do have a situation to where, well, you were working for us. You did create this character. You know what I'm saying? It's really up to us as a company if we want to acknowledge, if we want to compensate you or not. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there are other creators who have done the same thing, and maybe almost forgot about it, even if it was featured in a film, or either that or they're dead. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And but I don't know. I mean, listening to him, I get the point that he's saying, because if he hadn't created that storyline, yes, he did not create Bucky Barnes, Brubaker, but he did create the iteration of that character, the evolution of that character that made the rest of this other media possible, and has gone on to help contribute to a multi-billion dollar industry, for Marvel Studios and for Marvel Comics proper. Those paperbacks are still flying off the shelves from what I hear. Even more so now with the TV show.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, as a character, that is at an all-time high, the Winter Soldier. And, yeah, now it really does seem like, Marvel, really should be ashamed of themselves, with that. But in other iterations, it's like, sometimes it's like, well, it was work for hire. So it's a gray area, man. What do you think, D? What did you think?
It's definitely work for hire. There should be a tilting point at some point where once you get past a certain level of profit, you should automatically kick into some kind of extra innings as far as what the company will give you, and that's a fault with the work for hire contract. And I think now going forward, anybody that's going to be doing things for Marvel, anybody else that sees the potential for the outcome, will definitely re-examine their contracts again. Definitely, I think it'll behoove Marvel and other companies like them to address the issue of finances that are being given to their creators, because nobody wants to work for a company that's not going to give them the necessary penance or necessary kind of financial reality. I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously, he built a career off of this, and the success of his ability to sell the Winter Soldier as a character led him to greater and higher heights in his own personal career, as far as being able to do other things.
Right.
So that was part of his commentary that I liked too. He wasn't ungrateful himself. He realized his role, but at the same time he wished that Marvel had saw better of their way of giving him and other creators like him the kind of financial endowment that they so much deserve. It's a slippery slope, man. It's like he didn't reinvent Bucky. He didn't invent Bucky, but he reinvigorated Bucky. I mean, Bucky was boring. I'm quite frank with you. Bucky was boring. I mean, he was a little sidekick in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Got his ass kicked and blew up. That's what it was. And the fact that he brought him back in a relevant manner, which made him relevant today. And I have to say this, man. Even now, in the COVID generation, the mask that the Winter Soldier was wearing in the movie.
I caught that, yo, yeah.
That was like some pre
prophetic
destined prophetic stuff that was going on there. So I'm like, even that. I mean, now you can get a Winter Soldier costume and wear that, and I'm sure Brubaker has flashbacks of that as well. And be like, damn, all this is like making me see Bucky everywhere. You can see Winter Soldier everywhere, man. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say feel sorry for him, because I don't feel sorry for him. I don't think he wants anybody to feel sorry for him either, But I will say that I think it's just it's a sad practice that creators aren't given what they should be given in terms of knowing where this could go as far as IP usage goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and really what we're talking about is, you've got Marvel Comics over here, and then you've got Marvel Studios over here, and then you've got Disney over there. And in terms of I don't know what the chain of command is in terms of who commands the license and who issues payment for it or whatever. But, what happens in the comics is a separate entity from what happens in the movies, etc. But to both of your points about it's work for hire, and I agree with you, because I agree. I think, again, Brubaker, he made that plain several times. It was work for hire. I knew this going in. Of course, he knew about, Siegel and Schuster and Marv Wolfman and Jerry yeah, of course. Yeah, he knew about all of those things. But, he did say in the interview with Kevin and Mark that at the time when he created this character, Marvel didn't have its own studio, and Marvel was not owned by Disney. So maybe that would have changed his desire or his eagerness to kind of give this character away by throwing it into Marvel's pages, in the pages of Marvel's comics and Captain America. He may not have done that, with this knowledge ahead of time. Now, granted, it still doesn't mean anything, because in 2005, when the Winter Soldier first appeared in Captain America #1, there were 2 X-Men movies out. There were at least 2 Blade movies out at the time. Yeah. And so there were super successful characters from the comic books that were making the leap onto the big screen. And it could have been just as easy. Marvel could not have created its own studio and could have licensed Captain America and the Winter Soldier to Paramount or to Universal or Fox or whomever. And it could have blown up that way. And that was evident for him to see even then. So that kind of weakens his argument as far as, the fact of, what the state was prior to him creating the Winter Soldier and letting Marvel, publish it versus, what would have happened if, if he had done so under the umbrella of Disney and under the umbrella of Marvel Studios as well. So, so I'm not exactly sure if that part of the argument really holds water, but I mean, this is a decades-long situation that's been going on with creators, as far as, creating things, and then they move on to other media, animation, live-action TV, feature films, etc. But another thing, I guess, that Brubaker mentioned that I thought was interesting was, he's talking about all of the other things. And it kind of ties into that article I sent you guys, that Cracked article, the grim reality of superhero movies for comic creators. Where, Brubaker was talking about going to the premiere and, he's supposed to be on the list. He's not on the list. And it's Kevin Feige says, oh, yeah, you're on my list. You're on my list. And then when he gets there, he's not on the list. And he and Steve Epting had to text Sebastian Stan, who they'd made friends with.
Right.
And Sebastian Stan got them in.
See that kind of arrogant, ignorant Hollywood shit right there will get you fucked up when I meet you.
I mean, but it could happen as an accident. I mean, Kevin Feige is depending on assistants, and assistants, are like, man, fuck these comic book motherfuckers. I'm trying to get up in this business. They can't help me, so why do I care about them? I want to help people who can help me. I mean, that's the reality of what's going on.
I guess, man, it's unacceptable bookkeeping to me, man. Like you had I would like to assistant. You had one job.
Yes.
You had one job, and you didn't do the bare essentials and wasn't necessarily maintain that job, and you're gone,
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be so draconian about it, but at the same time, it's like, dude, if you're an assistant to Kevin Feige, whoever the case may be, you should know who the people are, who are the players in terms of who made this game possible.
No, not really. No.
Yeah, but that's the thing. No. Steve Epting and Ed Brubaker are not players.
Right.
I mean, at this stage, even though Epting, even though Brubaker, he's written for Westworld and he's done other things in Hollywood. He's not a name. He's not a power broker. He's not a player with a capital P.
I get it, but I mean, it's like, but no, it's like this, man. Like, okay, there are certain movies that have been written, or certain movies that have been written that are versions of Shakespearean plays and Shakespearean books, right? Mm-hmm. They always give credit to Shakespeare based on how that works. So it's up to that person that's going to be the assistant of that person that's helping out to know that this is a deviation of Shakespeare's book.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. They don't care. Yeah, they don't care, though. Shakespeare's a name.
Right.
Everybody knows Shakespeare. Right. Not everybody knows.
Right.
Nobody knows who Ed Brubaker is or Steve Epting. Except us.
Right.
People like us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I think I think your point, D, is you're probably coming from the perspective of somebody who's a fan of this stuff. So you want the people who create this stuff to be treated with a certain level of respect. But they're moving from a small pond into a larger pond with bigger fish, and those bigger fish don't give a fuck about these minnows over here. They don't care. Right. You don't affect my world. You have very little effect on my ecosystem. Just stay the fuck out of my way, and that's it.
Yeah. That's probably it. I mean, I guess it's just I would hope that people do more research than that, and but I guess obviously it doesn't prove out that that's the case in most cases based on how things went.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, the Winter Soldier first appeared in Captain America #1 in 2005, and his first appearance in the MCU was in Captain America: The Winter Soldier in 2014, and that surprised me. It didn't seem like it was that little time ago that the character. That we first saw the Winter Soldier, it was 7 years ago. It feels like 10 years ago, inside. But it was only 7 years ago. But he's appeared also in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, and then of course in his own series with with Sam Wilson, the Falcon, and streaming on Disney Plus. And oddly enough, Captain America: The Winter Soldier was the first appearance of the Falcon in the MCU as well. They both appeared in that same movie. That was the first time they showed up.
Okay. On your left.
Yep. 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 Yep.
It's pretty cool.
But to Dee's point, I was thinking about that too, and as far as the what the word he mentioned, draconian, in a business where IPs thrive, where you create things that are intellectual properties, work for hire agreements seem archaic and draconian in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand, especially when you're talking about you creating a character. Like sharing future profits with creators would have to mean that people, knowing that they can share, even if it's 5 or 10% or less, some portion of the profits later on, that they're going to bring their creative best to the table. They're going to bring their best idea. They're going to be encouraged to bring their best ideas to the table. And it takes me back to the conversation that Adrian and I had on the podcast talking about writer-artists.
Mm-hmm.
What if Marvel was fairer and Robert Kirkman had brought Invincible and The Walking Dead to Marvel or DC?
Wow.
What if, James Herron had brought Ultra Mega to Marvel or DC? Or anything else that's a huge hit as far as indie spaces. What if Latour, Hellboy? What if Latour? What if Hellboy? What if Latour, Mignola? If Jason Aaron had brought Southern Bastards to Marvel and DC because they could get a fair deal. They could get royalties and get wider distribution. This character could blow up 10 times as big as it is. These stories, these titles could blow up 10 times as big as they were. If they didn't walk in and say, okay, well, if you write this comic for us, you're going to give it away,
Yeah, but it almost seems like if you come into their house, though, you know what I'm saying, you're inviting yourself to have to abide by the house rules, even though you created it outside of the house. Once you step your foot in that door,
No.
It's like,
well,
go ahead.
The point I'm making is if their practices were different, there wouldn't necessarily be a need to only go to Image or to only go to another independent publisher for their properties. If Robert Kirkman created Invincible and The Walking Dead and knew he could take it to Marvel, and Marvel had a division where, hey, if you bring this to us fully formed and fleshed out, and we think it's worth it, you can participate in the profits on this all the way into other media, all this other stuff. What if that was their practice? Is my point.
Okay.
I get you on that, I get your point, and whether we want to admit it or not, there was the case, in a sense, for Rob Liefeld, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a podcast on for like the past year or more, and he talked about his situation on there with Deadpool, Cable, and a lot of other things that he created while he was there. And he says he recalls signing, and he was like about 21 or 22 years old back in 89, 90. Marvel offered him a contract, for future participation on anything that he created. So even at that young age, he took it to mean like, hey, well, maybe if they're offering this to me, I should just try to create as much as I can. And if it blows up, that's great. If it doesn't, well, at least I still have just this modicum of participation. And it just so happens the things that he created blew up in a major way. I mean, we're talking about Deadpool, star of 2 movies. Like a similar situation almost with Winter Soldier as far as popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Numerous miniseries, numerous comics, appearances in film, cartoons, video games, and Liefeld said that he participates in all of it, everything.
He's breathing rare air then, because so many other artists I'm going to mention a little bit later don't do that. But to your point, I got a devil's advocate question for you guys, and I'm looking at it from a corporate perspective now. Let's say we're doing a profit and loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many matches do we throw into the fire that actually light up and turn into what Wolverine did, turn into what Deadpool did, turn into what the Winter Soldier did? And how much time do we invest in those various artists and storylines to where we really reap a real true benefit from it? Because as we know right now, most comics are loss leaders, right?
Right.
Because they're not making a whole lot of money off the comics, off the pamphlets, off the floppies. They may make more money off the digests and off the trades, but they're not making a whole lot of money off this thing. So that from a corporate perspective, corporate profit and loss perspective, looking at things, they're like, okay, well, we can't afford to give you fanboys. I'm sorry, not that, they don't say that to them, but we can't afford to give you artists a fair share, which is bullshit and a lie. But that's their justification for not even offering a contract. It's going to give them a substantial back end. So I can see why they would do it, because it doesn't make sense for them, because you give everybody a contract that has that benefit built into it, and make the slightest bit of profit off of it, a slightest bit of profit margin off of it, they're going to want to get their money off of it and whatnot, which is fair. But we're talking about business. Business is not fair. And like you said so appropriately, Adrian, earlier, you walk into my house, it's my rules.
Well, but see, D,
you sign a contract and get the hell out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But D, I would challenge that by saying it doesn't have to be where you're giving away, you're giving away all your profits to these, essentially what are subcontractors who could move on and go to another publisher tomorrow. It's not necessarily that way. You can set it up where if I make money, you make money. If I make $1, you make a dime. If I make $100, you make $10. If I make $1,000, you make $100. So you make money as long as I make money. If I don't make money, then you don't make money. So that's the point of increasing someone's or enticing someone to say, hey, bring your best ideas, bring all your creative energies forward, and let's see what happens with this. If I make money, I'm certainly going to make most of the money because I'm taking most of the risk. But you will make money after the fact. Even with the situation with Epting and Brubaker, my thought has always been, because it doesn't sound like Brubaker saying, hey, you should give me a copyright for the Winter Soldier, and then I co-own the Winter Soldier with Marvel Studios. He never said that. What he's saying is the thank you money that they're offering him, he's calling it ungenerous. In other words, let's say if someone saved someone's child, from a burning car, pulled your child out of a burning car, and as a thank you, you bought him a cupcake. What?
Right.
It's not commensurate to the act. So I think in this particular instance, and Brubaker even said this, he said, what would be considered a generous offer? He didn't say exactly these words. I'm paraphrasing the hell out of it. But what would be considered generous to he and Steve Epting would be considered like an accounting error in Hollywood standards.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, we spent $100,000 on Kraft Foods on this movie? Oh, well.
Right.
It's nothing. It's nothing in the scope of $1 billion. If they were to go to those guys and say, hey, look, we're going to give you both $200,000 apiece as a thank you for this. Is it going to make them rich? Not really. Is it going to set them up for retirement? Not really. But can they say they got nothing for it? They can't say that. At that point, they can't say that. It's significant enough to help them and to say, thank you for creating this thing that we're going to milk the fucking hell out of for as long as we can.
Right.
But it's not little enough where it's like, okay, well, goddamn, I feel insulted. And that's what he's basically saying. They feel insulted, or he feels insulted.
Right.
He's not speaking for Steve Epting.
Right.
So, Brubaker didn't create Bucky Barnes, but he did create the Winter Soldier. And when you and I and Dee were talking about this in our text exchange prior to recording, I was making the point that the Winter Soldier is greater than the sum of his parts prior to that. He's much greater than Bucky Barnes. I mean, I love Bucky. I love Bucky. I love Bucky with the.
I like him in a TV show.
I love him with the mask on and the red and blue with the double-breasted coat on.
The little tuxedo suit.
I love that. I love it. But the Winter Soldier is much greater than his original parts. It's like the person who first said, "Let's take a chocolate bar and dip it in peanut butter and see what that tastes like." That's some new shit. That's not peanut butter anymore. That's not chocolate anymore.
Right.
This is a Reese's cup. This is a whole new thing.
Right.
Or the person who created pizza who basically said, let's take what's essentially pasta, cheese and sauce and some other stuff and some meat. Let's put it on some bread, that's circular, and then let's cut it in slices and eat that shit.
Right.
That's a whole new motherfucker right there, yo.
That's true.
It's a whole new thing. Nobody says,
true.
Yeah.
"Oh, pizza ain't nothing but no." You cannot blaspheme pizza in the
true.
face of anybody who really loves some damn pizza.
That's true.
Yeah.
And to me,
True.
that's what the Winter Soldier is. It's like, no, this is excellent. This is something
Right.
different. The Spider-Gwen is the
Right.
same way, created by Jason Latour and Robert Rodriguez and Rico Renzi. It's something greater than Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy wasn't shit.
Hey, now, hey.
Hey, man, she was the babe who got her neck broke. Okay, that's it.
God damn. God damn.
Hey, man.
They heard like Wu-Tang torture. But
right,
I made
right.
you off the GW branch off of this motherfucker.
Let me do a quick disclaimer there. Some of the views are posted at Sidebar are not saying. Go ahead.
She was a girlfriend of Peter Parker. She was somebody that he pined after. She was a side character.
Right.
Okay.
Jason
Side chick.
and Robbie
Right.
and Rico made her a real character. That character
True.
design is awesome. The colors are awesome. The ballet slippers are a fucking fantastic touch. Now she is
Yeah.
somebody that I actually think about as a real 3D flesh-breathing character. And they made her that.
Right.
Doesn't matter if she came from
Right.
Gwen Stacy. Spider-Gwen is something else.
Right.
And I hope they're getting paid for it. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I hope that they are.
Right.
So anyway,
Amen.
that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
As far as Gwen Stacy goes, as far
Well,
as
just the
Spider-Gwen
idea
goes,
that,
or-
you know, once you take something and you add other things to it, it does become something else. You know, if you take water and you mix it with tea or with coffee beans, it becomes something else. It's not water anymore.
Yeah. There are numerous IPs like that. I would say are very appropriate. I mean, when back in 1977 or 78, when Christopher Reeve donned, you know, the famous Superman costume, you know, he elevated that franchise and that character to a point to where you could believe a man could fly, and he gave it a sense of reality, he gave it a sense of personality that set it up for success for numerous generations afterwards. So yeah, it's you know, in the right hands, characters change and they evolve, and undoubtedly, I mean, Spider-Gwen's a good example. The fact that John Byrne helped write the first crystallization of Hellboy was a good example. Maybe not a good example, but it's an idea of what a real writer can do in terms of, or a person that has creative verve can do. Not saying Mignola is not a real writer, because he is. But yeah, man, I totally agree, man. I think you and they should be paid for that, man. When you take something that was stagnant and not going anywhere anytime fast, and you revitalize it with a sense of earnestness and interest, there's a cost for that. There should be a cost for that. There should be a stipend which is appropriate to the level which you magnified it.
I was going to say that's almost similar in other industries, or at least it used to be, to where if you were a salesperson, right, and you elevated sales within your division or within the company to such a level that the company would recognize that. They would say, in honor of Dwight Clark selling this many, whatever it is, we want to give you this gold plaque, this gold watch, this stipend. You know what I'm saying? In most other industries, the employees who, you know, do something to contribute to the company's success in a major way are compensated.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, it's only within like the creative field where that's not the case, or that's not often the case. You know what I'm saying? Because I think at the base of it, people still, in some ways, think of like creativity as just like this magic that happens. It just comes from somewhere, because you can't put your finger on it, because you can't bottle it up.
It's not tactile.
It's not tangible. Exactly.
Exactly.
So since it's not tangible, since I can't quantify it except by what you create and how much success and financial gain we have off of that creation, they just discount it, literally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the contributions that are made from that creativity, the companies don't care.
Yeah.
You know, you might create like an excellent character that works on paper, but if it is not contributing to sales of issues or paperbacks or, you know, contributing to ticket sales, you know, of films or video games or whatnot, they're like, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because they're crunching numbers, man. That's what bottom line is. And that's what it should be for a business. I mean, businesses aren't evil. They're a constant existing organism that needs to be fed, you know, and they're like Galactus. They have to be, their needs must be met, you know, and they don't care who falls by the side, wayside, or who loses. It's just you're part of the process, and in that process, you either contribute or you don't contribute. If you contribute, we'll give you a little bit of adulation, a little bit of recognition, but it may not be monetarily, you know. I mean, the fact that, you know, and some of the other examples you guys are going to mention pretty soon. They even get any kind of basic byline, any kind of mention in the movies at all. It's like, wow. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
This is reckless. It's reckless and careless. It just shows, man. Like you said, Adrian, it shows the basic misunderstanding of what creators truly create and what they contribute to situations. You know, and how can you value something that's intangible? I mean, it's annoying to hear somebody say, "Well, you're an artist, right? So draw something." I mean, huh? Or you would do this either way because you're creative, right? So why not just do it for me for free? What?
Yeah, and
you know,
to Adrian's point about creativity and the respect that it's either given or not given, you know, it's a muscle like anything else. It's something that you develop. It's like, you know, I used to hear comedians and they used to talk about, oh, so and so is funny. This person's funny. This person's not funny, and they don't just mean like they can crack a funny joke. You know, I think it was either Guy Torres or what's his brother's name? Joe Torres.
Joe.
One of them said, you know, a stand-up comic, you know, says funny things, but a comedian makes things funny.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the difference. And it's the same thing with creativity. I'll give a real-life example. When Dwight and I were first starting Sidebar, and I was working on like music to use as the intro and the outro, right? And then Dwight was like, well, you know, okay, well, let me, you know, go ahead and start. I was working on some stuff, and, you know, how's it coming? And he was checking in on me, and I was like, well, it's probably going to be, you know, a month or two before I'll have anything that's worth listening to. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, okay, my muscles were, at the time, I hadn't made any music in a long time. So I was like, the first 50 ideas are going to be shit. I've got to exercise my creative muscles. I've got to break my ear open where I can really hear. I've got to get my instincts back in terms of, oh, let me do this and that. Let me change the tempo. Let me do whatever. It took time to get to something that was even what I would consider to be decent, where I could say, okay, I at least won't be embarrassed if I let him hear this. Right. But it's the same way. It's the same way, like, you know, we see, you know, there are artists that we're friends with and that we follow online. You know, sometimes they'll post like, oh, I sketched this, you know, while I was drinking my coffee this morning. It's like, okay, you're going to draw for 8 or 9 or 10 hours later today. Why are you drawing while you're sketching? It's to warm up. It's to warm up. It's to get loose and get limber and to get the juices flowing. And it takes time to do that. You know, I mean, you could probably pull a creative muscle if you're not careful, you know, just like a person working out, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I
mean, repeating the same task over again, man. It can be repetition. While it's good and it leads to success in some instances, it also leads to boredom. So you got to be really careful about how much you do the wrong way, or how much you do of something to the point where you get tired and exhausted. You know? Yeah. Because once you get to the point of exhaustion, there's no turning back from exhaustion. You just start doing, you know, stuff that's not good enough for anybody at that point.
Yeah. And not to, you know, act like, you know, Ed Brubaker, and we haven't done that, but not to, you know, to speak about Ed Brubaker and really Steve Epting, but certainly Brubaker as if he is a pauper who is, you know, on his last whatever. You know, as mentioned, you know, he's a terrific comic book writer. Today, you know, he works in Hollywood as a screenwriter. You know, he was a part of the Westworld writing room for at least one season. Right. I'm not sure, maybe longer than that. But he still writes comics now. He writes comics that he owns, like Criminal and Pulp and Fatal. But he worked in commercial comics for years and did like Gotham Central at DC, and then did a great run on Daredevil and of course Captain America, for Marvel. And while he was working on Captain America, with Steve Epting, they created the Winter Soldier, and and that brings us to where we are now. But we were kind of knocking about amongst ourselves, the names of some other creators who have kind of gotten stuck over the years, and some of them have really spoken up and have litigated and sued Marvel and DC, etc. And some of them have have gone to the to the media and to social media, as a way to kind of plead their case. But I wanted to talk about some of them because really and truly, like, for anybody who's working in commercial comics under a quote work for hire arrangement and doesn't get any compensation for for the stories that they create, and that's kind of the other part of it too. We're talking about characters that were created, but Claremont and Byrne created the storyline that essentially became a Wolverine movie and didn't even get a thank you. Didn't get a created by or special thanks, nothing. Brubaker talks about the origin of the Winter Soldier and a storyline about the the Winter Soldier training other super soldiers. That was a B plot in the movie, but that was something that he created in the comics. And there are other examples of it too, where we see it certainly in animation, where they'll take the comics whole hog and redo the story in animation. That happened in Batman the Animated Series, and and probably in Superman and Justice League as well.
Yeah.
But Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, probably the most famous examples. They created Superman and only got money after they started making a stink, and after Neil Adams started making a stink on their behalf.
Yeah.
Bill Finger, he worked as essentially like a ghost writer and a ghost artist for Bob Kane.
Just a ghost writer.
Okay.
And he contributed many of the elements that we know as totally Batman. You know what I'm saying? And then Bill Fingers ended up taking all of it, and soon after he started using ghost artists and then just signing his name to it.
You mean Bob Kane?
Bob Kane. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Joker.
Yeah. Dave Cockrum and Dwight and I have a particular story to tell about Dave Cockrum. For younger fans who aren't aware, Dave Cockrum is the guy who basically co-created the new X-Men. The X-Men that exist today, they were all birthed by he and Len Wein.
Len Wein?
Yeah, Len Wein. But he co-created the X-Men characters. He co-created Black Cat. A lot of his costume designs actually were used in Legion of Superheroes.
That's right.
Which he worked on for a while he was at DC. But Dwight, you and I attended a Heroes Con.
Yeah.
This must have been 20 years ago.
Was it 20 years ago?
Was it that long?
No, bruh. No, maybe 15, maybe 16. But we're close, coming close. We're kind of not playing like numeric games and things like that. We're super close to that around that time. You're right. And he was there, man. And I gotta say this, man. At the time, he was writing off some relative success for the Futurians. Which was like really his last true innovative costume design. And this guy had a design aesthetic, man, for costumes that was beyond his years, man. He would take old raggedy ass concepts, man, and reinvent them and put the right lines in the right place. And they would tell the story, like, of the character without even like truly even having the character speak or write or to speak in bubbles or say anything at all. The grandeur of Colossus, dude. The first time I saw him come out of the page, dude. X-Men, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, Colossus, coming out. That shit was
it was the truth, yo. It was.
It was the truth, man. Wolverine running, man. Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler was my favorite character design, dude. Back then, it was between the Russian, Colossus, and Kurt Wagner, as I called him back then, before I got educated. The Nightcrawler, and to see him, man, in that predicament, man, looking like born on the 4th of July, man, looking like an old Vietnam vet with scraggly hair, man, and just sitting in his wheelchair, man. It was heartbreaking, you know.
Yeah.
Utterly heartbreaking, and I think I might have had an idea to get some comics for him to sign. Dude. I think I might just turn and walk the other way, dude. Based on that. I couldn't.
You did. We were there together, and I remember you were like,
yeah,
like we saw him, and we were like, that's Dave Cockrum, and he had this long, gray, scraggly hair, in this green kind of army jacket on, and he was in a wheelchair. He was wheelchair bound at the time, and he was drawing and sketching. And I remember I was doing something, and Dwight came over to me, man. He had his head down. He was like, man, I can't even look at this dude, man. He's like, this is terrible, man. This is shameful. I feel ashamed.
Yeah.
You know, that was your emotional state at the time. And I remember like looking, I was like, yeah, you're right, yo. This is, like Adrian said, this is like some born on the 4th of July, type shit where it's like,
right.
I mean, it made me feel horrible. And I want to say at the time, the X-Men movies were out. So we started the podcast in 2007. This Heroes Con was before 2007. And I know by 2007, at least 2 X-Men movies were out at the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it was bad. But, of course, famously, Alan Moore,
Right.
And it's kind of a funny story for him because, the Watchmen are essentially rip-offs of the Charlton characters.
Right.
So it's like, okay. But, I mean...
Cosmetically, at least. Cosmetically,
yeah,
that's what they
cosmetically.
Yeah.
He certainly made them, he imbued them with, everything that we love. But, he had an arrangement with DC where DC would publish Watchmen for essentially a limited amount of time or period of time, and then the license would turn back over to he and his collaborator, Dave Gibbons, yeah. And DC just kept printing the books, which kept the license in place, or kept the ownership of the characters in place, and just kept printing the books, and and then they wait, and then they keep printing them, and they keep printing them, and then they would just keep printing them, and they would print them some more, and then when we thought they were done, they would start printing them again, and they would just keep printing them. And he said, okay, since you fucked me out of my characters, I'm never going to work for you again. Now, granted, let's just be honest. Let's just be honest. Let's just go ahead and say it like it is.
Okay.
The greatest shit that Alan Moore is ever going to create has been created.
I don't know.
This is not. This is it, dog.
I don't know, man.
He's never gonna trump V for Vendetta. He's never gonna trump Miracle Man, or Marvel Man. Excuse me. He's never gonna trump Watchmen. He's never gonna trump League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's never gonna trump Prometheus. He's never.
I mean, seriously, I don't know, he's the GOAT for a reason, man.
Right. No, he is, man. But my thing is this, man. The last thing he said was never going to trump Prometheus. I mean, Prometheus had the potential, to me, to be as great as any of those other ones that you mentioned before. They got a lot of praise for. Prometheus was a fantastic series, man. Absolutely fantastic series, and especially in today's climate of Me Too movement and empowerment and things of that nature, way ahead of his time. Like his other stories, I mean, when I first became hip to Alan Moore, it was in the
Warrior magazine.
No, well, I started going back after that. I was first hip to him in Swamp Thing, with the anatomy lesson. And when I read that, man, that blurb, he had an anatomy lesson where he's talking about him something's in the water, watching, waiting, along those. I was like, what the hell is this?
Yes,
man?
yo, yeah.
What the hell is this? So then after I read some of the Swamp Thing, because they were just floppies back then. I would go to the store, go to Oxford bookstore.
Floppies.
And I would, I feel comfortable with the term now. Yeah, it works. But I would go to the store and I would go looking in the comic section. I would look through those beautiful Warrior magazines are of British origin. I'm like, wait a minute. Who's this? Alan Moore's in here too? Wait a minute.
Yeah. He
did this? He did that? And he even had pseudonyms, which you did like 3 different series, man. Like, I think Laser Racer and Axel Press Button were actually done under a pseudonym that he actually made up too. So he had a lot of different things he would do. And phenomenal, man. A phenomenal writer. And yeah, but basically back to what we're talking about. Yeah, he was definitely ganked out of his stuff. I mean,
The gank
but he was, but he was defiant though. See, what makes this less painful is the fact he defiantly keeps creating. He defiantly keeps giving the middle finger, you know. And I can appreciate that as a creator that keeps moving on. And I don't want anything from you. Don't even mention my name. You know, for any future references whatsoever at all. Take my name off that shit. Give it all to Dave. I don't want any of that shit.
Yeah.
And I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. He's definitely crazy because he believes in magic, but
right.
he's definitely a person of principle.
Like the love is spoonful.
You believe in magic in a young girl's heart.
Amen. Like my man said, man. It's a kind of magic.
Yeah. But
it's a kind of magic.
He's a person of principle.
One dream.
For two reasons. One, he didn't have anything to do with you. Take my name off of it, and I don't want your money. Right. But he's also been a person of principle because he doesn't begrudge the artists that he worked with. He's like, give them the money.
Right.
He recognizes that they did a lot of heavy lifting, so he doesn't begrudge, David Lloyd for V for Vendetta. He doesn't begrudge Dave Gibbons for Watchmen, or what's the fellow who drew League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Kevin O'Neill.
Yeah. He doesn't begrudge any of them. So, I appreciate that. But, and then also probably the most tragic example of wow, if there was ever someone who could have used a fair shake from a company that was making millions of dollars, perhaps billions of dollars off of things that he created, is Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo is responsible for the fact that, and so I'm reading from the article from Cracked, written by Maxey. It says, Bill Mantlo is responsible for the fact that the MCU has a talking space raccoon in it, thus accounting for 83% of its coolness. Unfortunately, Mantlo was left with brain damage after a hit-and-run accident, and his brother had to wreck his finances in order to keep Mantlo alive. Marvel Studios began helping them out when the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, probably for PR. That's just my insertion. But by 2019, the Mantlos were forced to turn to GoFundMe in order to survive. Again, Marvel stepped up, but let's not kid ourselves, the article says. Like with Starlin and the rest, none of this would have happened if someone hadn't gone to the media and made the big corporate giant look like a giant cheapskate.
That's essentially what Neil Adams did for Siegel and Schuster.
Exactly.
But what's crazy with that, piggybacking off of that, Swizz, is how they tried to do that for Kirby, but Kirby still ended up getting a raw deal. You know what I'm saying? Like under Shooter, Jim Shooter, he campaigned to get his artwork back. Hey, can I get a credit for this? And Shooter said, okay, yeah, sure. Well, we'll start giving you some of your artwork back. That man drew tens of thousands of pages and only got back a small fraction, an infinitesimal fraction of them. What happened to all the other pages? Well, you're seeing them on sale elsewhere, on all these various art sites. How did that get out there?
Right.
And then not to mention him having a hand in creating the modern Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so much that he had a strong hand in. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just and he wasn't able to participate in any of that. In fact, back in the late 70s, I think for which company was, I think it was Filmation or somebody like that was Hanna-Barbera or someone like that was producing like the actual Fantastic Four cartoons.
Right.
Where they put in Herbie the Robot. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
He had a hand in that, but they didn't even mention him on the cartoons.
Wow.
Even though he's in the background doing character designs for it.
Yeah, and didn't he ever? I mean, I know Alex Toth did Alex Toth did a lot of designs for
Super Friends, Johnny
like
Quest.
Super Friends.
But the one he's referring to in terms of there was another character I really liked. It was Thundar the Barbarian.
Yes, and Kirby worked on that as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he was in the credits on that, but he didn't create Thundar. You know what I'm saying? But he worked on conceptual stuff. But,
Right.
you know, they think of the rest of the mainstream Marvel universe that was birthed from a combination of Stan Lee and him. You know, in some cases, Jack would draw the story and, you know, Lee didn't know beforehand. He just told him, oh, we just need a villain for this. We need a character for this, you know, to fill in. And Jack would come in with a fully fleshed out, you know, visual story for him that Lee had to put the words to.
Right.
So in some cases, like, Kirby whole cloth created some of this stuff.
It's almost, you know, it almost reminds me of, from a strange metaphor, it reminds me of pantomiming, right? So it's almost like Kirby was doing the motions and moving around and making all these things possible in terms of telling the story. And then all of a sudden, here comes Stan Lee. I'll put words to that. So, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, without the structure of the story, and you guys mentioned this in the last podcast that you did together, which is interesting, you know, and good too. You know, without the structure of the visuals being in place, there is no comic book. You know, it's just words on a page, and to belie like the immensity of this guy's ability and power and significance, and any other visual artist that approaches the medium, is you're selling the medium short, and you're selling the people that are putting this stuff together short too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I find it extremely offensive, man. It pisses me off to no end.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another is Len Wein.
Mm-hmm.
Len Wein co-created Wolverine and Swamp Thing, the aforementioned Swamp Thing that Dwight and Adrian were talking about. And Wolverine's, you know, Len Wein is Wolverine's creator. He says he got more money for Bruce Wayne's. Len Wein says he got more money for Bruce Wayne's buddy Lucius Fox,
Right.
than he did for Wolverine from Marvel.
Hey.
So Lucius Fox in the Batman movies that Christopher Nolan directed, he got more compensation for that than he did for Wolverine. How much has Marvel as a comic company through merchandising, etc., how much money have they made off of Wolverine even before you get to the movies and the cartoon? Before any of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
How much money have they made off of Wolverine?
Dude.
How do you not just break off Len Wein? Who's the artist who co-created it? Was it Herb Trimpe?
It was Trippy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trimpe has passed away, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But then you could also say John Romita Jr. Not John Romita Jr. John Romita Sr.
John Romita Senior.
Yeah, he actually did the initial design for that costume, the yellow with the blue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. With the whiskers, yo.
Yeah.
It actually, if you go to Wikipedia, of course Wikipedia is correct because it's Wikipedia. Wikipedia does list Wein and Romita Sr. as the designers and creators of Wolverine. But
Okay.
Gotcha.
how do you not give that guy like 100 G's a year just because? How does he not get broke off just because? You know, he took a picture, Len Wein took a picture at a convention with Hugh Jackman.
Uh-huh.
You know, Hugh Jackman's, you know, like a foot and a half taller than he is. He's got his arm around him, and he's pointing at Len Wein, and he's like, you know, thanks, Len Wein, for creating this character and changing my career. And Len Wein's response was, I was flattered, and it was very, very nice, but I would have preferred a check.
Yeah, that's just what it is.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
And that's just what it is.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of weird is the article, the Cracked article, which I'm going to continue to refer to, says that the second problem is that the rules for cashing in on your creations, you know, as you make an arrangement with the companies for, you know, your character going off into other media, he says is full of bullshit. Is full of bullshit limitations, and the companies aren't shy about exploiting them. For instance, Wolverine appeared in 6 films before Wein saw a single cent due to a clause about the movie having to be named exactly after the character. So the Wolverine counts as payment. X-Men Origins Wolverine does not.
You have to, you know that's why they named the movie like that. You know that's why.
Sure.
Yeah, yo.
Sure.
Because everybody was wondering, why the fuck did they call it this? What the fuck is this? X-Men Origins, what?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's wicked, man. It's wicked.
It really is.
You know, and and you ask yourself, like you ask yourself as a creator, why the fuck would I want to work for these guys? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do I fucking want to waste my time putting in my best time and hours in the day, fucking with you fuckers?
Because
it's because, you know, I'm sorry, and I say it's over. I've said it many times in my previous incarnation. I said it in this one as well. You know, if I see one more fucking Wolverine story, it'll be wasting my time. I don't need to see one more fucking Batman story. I don't need to see one more fucking Spider-Man story. I'm good. I'm good.
I'm looking at Adrian.
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, is there room to grow with the character? Sure, there is in the right hands. Sure, it is in the right hands. But the question is like, how much is too much, and how much is really, you know, really interesting and engaging anymore beyond what's been said before. What they get over on people is for every comic book is somebody's first comic book. Every generation, Spider-Man is somebody else's generation of Spider-Man.
Right.
So they're able to iterate and change just enough to where it seems interesting to that particular generation, and it works. So I get it. I'm not some crazy, you know, knuckle dragger in that regard. But I just find it, from my age and where I've been with these characters, I'm pretty much, I think I've gone as far as I can go with these characters. Now that being said, and you guys, you know, like brought up last episode or 2 episodes ago. When you're flying solo or flying dolo, you know, Dwight is interested. Dwight is interested in Hickman's X-Men. So, you know, he reinvigorated the series. He reinvigorated the all the back matter that made it relevant, and put it all into one nice little package that makes it work again. So there's possibilities there. Go ahead.
So let me ask you this though, D. Within that realm of possibility, has Hickman created any new characters within that series?
Yeah.
Or has he has?
Yeah. Boldly so. Boldly so.
Okay.
But I'm sure hopefully he's gonna get broke off for those things too if they go any further than what they are in terms of comics. But he's done some stuff that's like, oh wow.
Okay.
Oh wow. That's why this does this. You know, he's made a brand new universe for these guys, made it relevant. It's like if current Marvel is 616 or whatever, you know, this is like 620. You know what I mean? It's like some other kind of parallel, you know, and I fully appreciate it and I'm engrossed by it. That being said, I haven't read it in months, so I'm behind, but, you know, being my current situation and whatnot. But yeah, that's my rant. I don't, you know, characters, or I should say, people that create things for people now, the big two or anything is big. You really need to guard your contracts. You really need to go your contract with a fine-tooth comb, make sure you're getting what you're going to get. Because at any point in time, they can flip on you and make something bigger than what you planned on.
Yeah.
Anything could hit. Anything could hit. You don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look at Jessica Jones. Didn't Bendis create Jessica Jones?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Got a TV show. Might end up in the Marvel MCU proper.
Did you get broke off yet? Did you get broke off?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, likely so, but so also like Denny O'Neil created Ra's al Ghul.
Oh, that's
you
right.
know, co-created Ra's al Ghul. One of probably my favorite Batman villain, other than maybe Catwoman.
Okay.
Created Ra's al Ghul. Marv Wolfman, and we talked a little bit about him as well before we started recording.
Here we go, yeah.
You know, Marv Wolfman created Cyborg, Raven, Starfire, and Deathstroke of the new Teen Titans, and he created Bullseye over in the Daredevil universe.
You know, him creating Blade, you know, from Tomb of Dracula. You know, Gene Colan was drawing it, obviously, so you got to include Gene Colan in that, but
yeah,
Wolfman went to court. He sued Marvel and was like, hey, what's up? Right. And then went to court, and the court said, nah, Marvel got this one. Nah.
The pockets win, sir.
The thing about that, too, is if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Wolfman who said that at the time when he created those characters, he was not working under a work from hire contract.
Mm-hmm.
That was his big thing. But, you know, I know this from the music business. The person who the public thinks made it popular, that's who owns the character.
Yeah.
That's who wrote the song. Whoever made it popular, that's who owns it. That's why copyrights are great if you have to litigate, But ultimately, what they say is get the word out about what it is you're doing, so that you're the one who's known for this. And then when people say, well, wait a minute, what about this person over here? No. This person was doing this 8 years ago. This is who created this. We know this. This is who made it popular, even if it's in a regional sense. But
Yeah, it's like keeping receipts. Yeah.
exactly. Also, too, Gene Colan co-created The Falcon.
That's right. He was drawing it then. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gene Colan co-created The Falcon. Another character, Jerry Conway. He wrote the storyline for the death of Gwen Stacy, which was featured in the Amazing Spider-Man movie, the second Amazing Spider-Man movie. I believe the Andrew Garfield movies.
Yeah, exactly, Andrew Garfield.
Yeah. And he also co-created The Punisher.
That's right.
Now, granted, The Punisher was a complete rip of, one of those old pulp characters. I forget the name. Which one was it?
Mac Bolan.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. All day.
There we go.
Mac Bolan.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
that.
The Destroyer.
But, The Punisher has had a great, 2 seasons on Netflix. It's great. A great character in the comics. Has had endless comics done well after Jerry Conway has long left writing comic books as a profession. And the Punisher is probably going to end up, he ended up in the films, but he's probably going to end up in the MCU proper at some point.
Yeah.
They're going to have to.
About time.
And then also, I guess last was Gary Friedrich.
Oh, yeah.
He created Ghost Rider, D.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I remember in our previous iteration, we had a whole episode about that at the time. And listening back to that, it's kind of cringy because I didn't make the point strong enough. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's like, dang, we were kind of ride or die for that, but we didn't really have a concrete, understanding of what was going on like we do now. Yeah.
Well, go ahead and make the point now, Adrian.
I guess the point now is that I absolutely see where he's coming from, and I think back then the difference is that I know for myself, I was running more on the passion of the issue, as far as like it even affected me to the point to where at the time, this was very long ago, I was doing commissions, of these characters. And once that whole Gary Friedrich thing started, I started writing the copyright at the bottom of my commissions. Like, no, copyright, Marvel, Incorporated, man. You know what I'm saying? And again, it was that passion just seeping out. It's so stupid, but
No.
yeah.
You've always been one to give people the proper due, Adrian. So that's not stupid at all, man. You always one that to be stand up about. Okay, this is a homage to this particular. I mean, even that awesome piece you have of me you did with of Snake from Metal Gear Solid. You after Yoji Shinkawa on there, which I appreciate that. So it's like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with standing up for the person that originated the work, and if you're immediately doing a homage to them, saying that, I think there's not enough of that going on actually for people that take stuff, even like you guys alluded to a couple episodes ago, man, where John Byrne at his peak, he was doing multiple series, drawing multiple series, writing multiple series, and he was reusing a lot of shit too. Like that whole 137 or 138 where he's Cyclops is holding Jean Grey. He used that in Action Comics for Superman as well. So it was like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but at the same time, it's kind of frowned upon where it's such an easily resource to find, so easily source the original material.
Yeah. So
that's getting into another conversation. But yeah, man, I just think it's just a dog-eat-dog business, man. It really is, man. And for one of the things that really threw me back, going back to Brubaker originally in the Fatman Beyond interview he did, was the fact that he knew people inside the industry, in the comic book industry, and Marvel proper, that were secretly laughing at him behind his back because he was not getting his due. And these people call themselves your friends, ultimately. And they're laughing at you behind your back, the fact you're not getting the money you deserve.
Right. We talked about this. That's capitalism.
Yeah.
That's capitalism. That's capitalism that says, if you get what you deserve out of life, if you are getting royally fucked, somehow you deserve that because you didn't fight to keep yourself from getting fucked.
Mm-hmm. Is this like some kind of dark fucking karma, yo? What the fuck? Some kind of dark Buddhist bullshit? What the fuck is that?
That's the weird thing to me. So in our society, if a bigger person walks up to a smaller person and intimidates them into giving them their money, we look at that as being wrong. But if a bank, which is a large entity, goes up to a little person, or let's say a car dealership, goes up to a person and they sell them a car and they sell it to them at 20% interest, even though knowing that the person qualifies for 5% interest, we don't consider that bullying. The fact that the fact that they would say, well, this person should have known how to negotiate for themselves better. We don't consider the car dealership a bully, or the bank a bully, or the corporation to be a bully, but that's bullying. To some extent, that's what it is. And so I just think it's just, as I'm sure you guys do, I think everybody should be an adult and everybody should accept the decisions that they've made, and you have to own them, you have to live by them. But at the same time, like in Brubaker, to bring it back to Brubaker, and I'm probably going to title this episode #Pay Brubaker and Epting. But to go back to Brubaker's point, I've never heard him say, oh, they should give me a separate copyright for The Winter Soldier. Oh, they should share the ownership of Bucky with me because of what I did. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying, hey, can I get some compensation that's even commensurate to what my investment is in terms of what, the windfall that you all have made? He even talked about Dave Chappelle. I remember I was reading the articles or seeing the articles. I didn't read the articles because I don't give a shit about Dave Chappelle much anymore. But he was talking about Dave Chappelle, when he did Chappelle's show, whoever owns the license or the ability to put Chappelle's show online on streaming, they don't have to pay Chappelle anymore. Mm-hmm. They can just do it. And Chappelle went on like a 45-minute rant in one of his stand-ups talking about, hey, they're putting this show online and I don't make anything from it. This was my thing. This was my baby. This is what I poured my heart and soul into. He and Neil Brennan, his co-creator of the show, they poured, 16, 18 hours a day into the show for however many years. And they're putting it online and they're streaming it and they're making millions of dollars off of it. And I'm not getting anything. And he made us think about it. And whoever that was, I forget who it was, the entity was. I don't think it's Comedy Central. They came back to him and said, hey, Dave, we want to try to make this right with you. And they gave him a bunch of money. Now, did they have to? Did they legally have to? No, they didn't. Mm-hmm. Did they do it because as an effort of public goodwill because they were kind of getting shamed? Probably. But that's actually the cool thing about what's going on now with social media, with Me Too and with, frankly, cancel culture or accountability culture, as a lot of people are rebranding it. But now, via social media, everything is out in the open, and you can get fucking tarnished. You can get fucking, tarred and feathered if you mistreat people that the fans care about. Mm-hmm. So we just live in a world now where it's just not that way anymore, and I like that. I like the fact that, okay, yeah, you don't have to necessarily give Brubaker the character, but certainly pay he and Steve. Give him 100 G's and say if the Winter Soldier appears in another film or in another whatever, we'll break you off something else. For every movie and whatever he appears in, we'll break you off. It's not going to be a ton of money, but you're always going to see something every time this thing appears because of its contribution.
Yeah.
As long as we make money off of it, you make money off of it. Going back to my original point.
That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.